Happy afternoon. As the previous speaker said, Snobby, this is a very historical day. I think in the future, this day will be referred quite a number of times. And having a conference on this date is really a good coincidence. Incidentally, I also heard it is also Harish's birthday, right? The organizer's birthday. Good. So before we start, I would like to get a quick view of, this is going to be a slightly techie session. I want to understand how many of you are kind of techies who are slightly hands-on and from the IT industry. Okay. How many are managers, delivery, heading delivery and other stuff in the IT industry? And non-IT industry, anybody from? Okay, good. So the next 30 to 40 minutes, we'll try to get a flavor of what are the types of vulnerabilities we get exposed to in payment systems, some of the OWASP top 10, how there has been continuing some of the issues, and how important it is to ensure that the code, the entire architecture is being proactive with respect to security. Security should not be an afterthought. So that is we should walk away with the importance of security, some of the takeaways in terms of architectural vulnerabilities and issues, and some of the standards which are driving compliance as well as security. So Haiti versus Chile. What does this sound like? Does it sound like the World Cup football? Any thing which comes to your mind when you talk about Haiti versus Chile? Haiti, incidentally, is a Caribbean island. It's a Caribbean country, and Chile is from South America, right? So Haiti, in 2010, February 14th, I think, was hit by a earthquake of intensity 7.7 on the Richter scale. The extent of damage was like about 320,000 people died. About 1 million got injured, and about few lakh houses are gone, right? There was a colossal damage to the entire country, which took several years to reconstruct, about 6-7 years to reconstruct. Around the same time, in about 14 days or 13 days from that, that is 27th of February 2010, Chile had an earthquake of measuring 8.8 in the Richter scale, right? So imagine the intensity is much higher than what was done to Haiti. What would have been the damage? Any guesses? It's a high intensity earthquake, right? We have seen maybe 6 or around that, right? We have not seen big numbers like that, crossing 7. But what happened at Chile was that maybe around 50 to 100 people died, right? The numbers were like 100 or less than 100. And few buildings shaken, and few 15 or 20 injured. Can you imagine? Earthquake of 8.8 in the Richter scale right? Causing so little damage. Strong foundation. Yeah, I think she's right at the root cause of when they analyzed how did it withstand with so little damage, because Chile was a very organized country. They follow the building codes, no violations, everything is in order. The buildings also have to be constructed with focusing on earthquake related credentials and compliances. So when they are prepared, you could see the impact, right? So somebody said, if it has to happen, it will happen, right? Things like that. Though that is being fatalistic, right? Like Murphy's law. But if you are prepared, you can really minimize the damage, right? That is what the key message we can take away from this. Same way, with respect to cyber security, with respect to ensuring that organizations are built for security in mind, proactively rather than reactively. I'm sure many of the issues and challenges faced could be prevented. So we have seen in the recent past, when WannaCry and others hit, it could cause damage only in certain areas, certain organizations. Very little of impact in other majority of organizations, particularly in India and certain other areas. That is primarily because of some of the preparations, some of the adherences, some of the proactivity that has gone in with respect to the systems. So digital transformation, as we are all seeing, this has become the buzzword. But indeed it is one trend we can say with 100% certainty, right? Gartner talks about various trends, right? Forrester, we have Frost and Sullivan talks about top 50 technologies. If you see those hype curves, many of them die out, right, after a few years. But if you ask us, like one trend you can say with certainty, that 100% certainty it will happen. It is digital transformation. This is a trend. We can close our eyes and say, this is happening and the direction is clear. So today, if you see media industry, maybe about 80%. If the banking and financial services, maybe 50 to 60% impact. Already people are in the digital wave. Whereas there are some industries which are maybe 10%, 15%. But we know that which direction they are all going towards, right? Every day the extent of digitization is only improving, is enhancing. With various initiatives, if you are, the digital masters or leaders are really deriving the benefit, whereas the laggards are really facing threat of extinction, right? Even death. So software is becoming the core of this transformation. So if you look at industry after industry, medical devices, automobiles, right? Autonomous cars. So people are talking about not Toyota or Volkswagen becoming the biggest car maker in the world by 2020, 22. It is going to be the Google's. It is going to become the biggest car maker in the world with autonomous cars. Even as close to our neighborhood in Bangalore, we are seeing Tata Elxsi piloting the autonomous cars already on Bangalore roads. So again, automobile is totally going to be driven by software. Hence, it is going to be prone to virus attacks. All of those complications which accompany the traditional software process. Home appliances, public infrastructure. People are talking about tomorrow's wars being fought on the digital side. rather than with guns and missiles, right? So people are going to, Chinese want to attack India, it is going to be shutting our systems, various systems electronically rather than through airplanes or missiles. They can cause only little damage, but then the damage caused by the cyber wars are much bigger. Last but not the least, payments ecosystem. Imagine today, if we don't have connectivity, I think many of us will feel paralyzed, right? So that is the extent of dependency we are getting onto digital in terms of various areas. So any impact to these on the virus or cyber security side will cause real havoc in the system in the future. If you look at the enterprise, the number of apps beyond the enterprise is increasing. One of the reasons how enterprise is getting affected is earlier most of them were in-house applications, well controlled, but then today everybody is using third-party components, many APIs from outside, cloud, all of those bringing new dimension in terms of new challenges. Cashless payments, mobile payments, IoT and numerable devices being linked are posing the extra threats. DevOps, development and operations combined, and automating that is another aspect which can potentially incur significant damages if allowed to go with some issues or loopholes. Similarly, BYOD, Agile. So people are interested in releasing more into production. If without proper checks, without proper compliance, anything released into production can pose a significant risk. So people who are looking at Agile will have to face the threat of security very, very seriously. So they may issue many things into production, but if some of these have the real loopholes or real drawbacks, then potentially they can end up in serious issues. And many of them using open source apps and various versions, right? That is another big challenge in terms of issue security. So increase in velocity, variety, and volume of applications is definitely much bigger than what was happening earlier. So Sonatype is a company which is a central repository which manages Java components, Apache, SBT and all that. So they have reported that software applications have on an average 24 vulnerabilities, 7.5% out of 24 lakh components had known vulnerabilities. So even in a central repository, there were 7.5% which had known vulnerabilities. Top 100 components in 2014 used 27 different versions of each. See, the other major damage is the different versions which are appearing. So some of these could have been operated by hackers, would have been tampered with, but we don't know which ones are the right ones, and people are downloading various versions. 51 of the 58 versions of the Spring framework downloaded in 1 year. Imagine there are 58 versions and 51 versions have been downloaded. OS components got fixed only in 41% cases. One of the major errors, issues that comes up is in the OS also. So OS components, only in 41% it got fixed. And the mean time to repair was 390 days, more than a year it took to repair some of the issues. Very, very startling figures if you look at from the security angle. So if you look at the OWASP, right? I am sure many of you must be tracking this very closely. Over the years, if you see what are the top 10 items, the top 10 items, almost 7 of them have been remaining constant, right? So the SQL injection, broken authentication, session management, cross-site scripting, these are all common appearances over the years still. Only 2 or 3 of them have come into the top 10 in 2017. So in terms of percentages, denial of service still is the biggest one. So while there are several tools available in terms of identifying the malicious packets and preventing them, people are hesitant to use paid tools yet. People are still trying out with open source and other stuff, which is causing this to be still on top. SQL injection, right? Again, very high percentage. And the other brute force, those are all known stuff. Still, the unknown stuff is about 20%. Very, very alarming statistics in terms of vulnerabilities. So, since this being a cashless economy session, we are slightly going to go away into the payments, particularly mobile payments related areas. So, if you look at India, even the government is talking about next generation services being faceless, paperless and cashless. This is the mantra. So, with that, there are several digital payment methods which have come in. And some of the statistics in terms of BA intelligence who have collected this numbers. This is US mobile in-store payment volume, right? The transaction volumes. There is a 5-year CAGR of 80%, right? Almost every year it has been doubling. So, if you look at it, 500 billion is by 2020. There is another statistics which says 700 billion. But the numbers, similarly in India as well, the numbers are really exponential. Mobile cashless transactions, there are various ways in which we transact. Mobile wallets, mobile banking apps, card-based systems, contactless NFC, carrier billing, right? These are various mechanisms. I am sure most of you would have exposed to 1 or 2 methods, definitely. So, if you look at the architecture of a mobile app, very, very identical to a web-based app, but still with some limitations in terms of space and security and some of the functions which vary. Again, you have thick client and a thin client. This is a structure of a thick client. Mostly people prefer a thick client over a thin client, partly because we don't want too much of interactions with respect to data going outside of the mobile as far as possible. The structure of the mobile app. So, if you look at the various the critical business processes associated with mobile payments, starting from, let's say, technology. We have the payment application, the hardware, software and network, payment terminals and data, which are the technology elements. With respect to the payment information, the business process, we have the device management, registration. If you are looking at the wallet, there is a registration process, which is the most vulnerable to issues, credentialing, authentication. If you look at the stakeholders, we have the consumers, merchants, issuers, you have the mobile handset manufacturers and telecom service providers. The mobile payments architecture, so there are you have the NFC payments, you have the wearable payments. NFCs, obviously, you know that it is about 10 centimeters. You need to be near. Whereas with respect to wearables, you can even be away by a few meters. Still, you can do the transactions. What are some of the attack vectors against mobile payment devices? Classified into various areas. On the mobile payment device itself, phishing for critical information through USB, through NFC and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, through wireless interfaces. You have attacks through on the mobile payment application itself, exploiting the security vulnerabilities, local device storage vulnerabilities. On the terminal infrastructure, wireless and physical interfaces, security vulnerabilities on the device itself, and then on the backend infrastructure. We will be focusing on the application side a little bit more. If you look at mobile banking per se, is classified into three areas. One is the informational side, transactional, and service and marketing and acquisition. The transactional ones are the ones which are more prone to attacks. Mobile payment security architecture, when you are looking at the contactless payments, this is a typical architecture. We have the secure socket layer providing the encryption for the transaction. So I'm going a bit fast because we want to focus on some of the other important vulnerabilities and strategies and solutions. Malware, right? Spyware and SMS trojans causing integrity to the applications is a critical risk. Jailbreaking. Jailbreaking is where people download or change the parameters provided by the manufacturer, restrictions provided by the manufacturer to install unauthorized apps. So thereby they expose themselves to root attacks. So the moment a hacker is able to get access to the root of the device, then he can cause quite a bit of damage. So people customizing their device for various new applications, download, for customization of the interface, all of those pose certain security challenges as well. And users having control of the device sometimes is a good thing. That is, people want some personalization, people want to have control. That is fine. But sometimes what happens is the downside is they don't take care of some of the downloads, patches that come to them from the OS manufacturer or OS provider. Thereby, they expose themselves to serious attacks. SMS, transacting financial transactions through SMS is always a big no-no, partly because SMS is susceptible to misuse by redirection, hijacking and spoofing. Many of the information can be easily taken away. Privacy issue because of leaking personal data is a serious issue. Now we talked about how if you violate laws, there is a jail term. So EU is very, very strict on data protection laws. So it is important that as a developer, as a provider, application provider, we take into account the important dimensions of security. So these are some of the vulnerabilities with respect to mobile payments. Insecure Wi-Fi is known. So here there is a humor. We are always open to connecting with Wi-Fi wherever we go, right? Recently I saw humor in WhatsApp. There's a person who goes to the burial ground with the dead body. He is visiting the burial. He goes into the crematorium and he asks his friend what is the Wi-Fi password, right? The father who was standing nearby, who was going to perform the cremation, he got serious. He came to this person and said, respect the dead, right? This person is immediately asking, small letters or capital letters, right? Wi-Fi password, he is asking whether it is he thought the father is giving the password. So that is the obsession we have with connecting with Wi-Fi and wherever we go. So connecting in public Wi-Fi without password and restrictions, they are very, very dangerous. Very, very easily will be susceptible to attacks. Android repackaging, this is only hackers will be able to get onto a proper app and re-engineer it and modify critical areas and then upload it into the app store that people download and start using. Because people don't know the difference between the other application looks exactly similar. Similarly, multi-factor authentication. Today, password alone is not enough. See, we keep simple passwords, right, which can be easily cracked with algorithms. Even a 16-character alphanumeric code can be cracked in 160 seconds, is what they are saying. There are GPU techniques, the high processing power, which can change numbers at a rapid pace, and then so that is why people are talking about always when you are coding, allow only 5 attempts, right? The 5th attempt, nowhere should you open it up for number of access, so that the trial and error, people try out the password. Lost, stolen or resold mobile devices are potential targets for hacking of information. There is a separate process for sanitizing such devices. Improper session handling in code is again another major loophole. So some of the strategies: hardware level security for sensitive data. Sensitive data, because of the cryptography, consuming a lot of power on the device, it is important, instead of using software to do the encryption, many times hardware encryptions would be better. Storing PIN, always PIN should be only in user's memory, it should not be in the app or in the device. So any encryption should be done accepting the PIN from the user rather than from any of the hard-coded stuff inside the app. SSL, always use certificates from authorized players, check the certificates. Secure coding practices, for example, whenever you accept any input, validate them. Proper memory management. So standard practices in terms of code should be adopted with checklists, and many times, even though people know about it, there is the diligence is missing. As a result, they expose themselves to serious attacks. Data at rest as well as at motion should always be encrypted. HTTPS always ensures that data between client and server is encrypted, so you don't get easily the data from JSON or XML or cookies. So similarly, data cloning, whenever you are doing export import of data from the device, always we should do it with device as one of the encryption parameters, device ID, so that when it is taken to another device, it will not work, right? So as far as possible, ensure that implement also jailbroken router device detection. There are algorithms to check if a device has been jailbroken. If it is jailbroken, ensure that do proper alerts and see that you take adequate precaution. Similarly, logging. Whenever we enable logs, it is So in the past, people are always talk about maintainability, right? So the old school of thought is that any application you develop should be maintainable, neatly commented, should be easily debuggable and all that. The earlier, but today's, you have to be as cryptic as possible. You should not give away anything from the attacker perspective. They should work hard to really decode what you have written. So it should not be easily understandable thing. Nowhere should you use debugging tokens, and as far as possible use functions and which are from outside. Disable auto correction and copy paste. Even though these are very, very helpful and user friendly for the users, but these are potential areas where you expose yourself from a security perspective. So in terms of digital wallets, even though there are various security loopholes, but then the majorly the process where which is more vulnerable is the registration process, where people there are several malpractices that happen. So some of the risks, suggested mitigation and comments. So I'll be sharing this presentation with the organizers, with the Internettechies. I'm sure if some of you are interested, we can always take the deck from there. So many of these, the user education is very, very important as a mitigation factor. We need to bring more awareness in various areas. Only use reputable sites to download applications, and security should be integrated as part of the process. It should not be bolt-on. Should be tightly embedded security. And the regular EME standards are coming into play from Europe. That is the standard even RBI is prescribing, which is more safer. Before September, everyone has to implement EME standard is what they have prescribed. Yeah, SMS we talked about, hardware and OS vulnerabilities. So there are various risks. Many of these, we have covered this discussion. How do we address these problems, right? Secure coding, there are various guidelines available. Standard security components are also available. So OWASP itself keeps everything up to date. So it's a good repository to access and use. In case you are developing critical applications, take the expert into account. Also use tools like third-party tools which may be slightly expensive, but then they are worth using for some of the critical applications. There are code review and testing guides available. There are security enhancing process models available in terms of from OWASP, Microsoft, Gary McGraw. These are worth looking at if you are looking at steady practice in terms of building maturity in application security levels. Compliance driving security, mostly it is additional fines, restrictions and controls. In some cases it is also jail term when major compliances are broken. So if PCI compliance is not there, you cannot do business using credit cards, and particularly Walmart is a major customer, so you may lose out. Security is always by fear, uncertainty and doubt. That should not be the case. It should be an integrated process. It should be part of the discipline in our software development process. Way forward, competence is the know-how. Capability is how to put the know-how into action. Capacity is to increase and spread the knowledge across so that more people are able to get the know-how as well as the implementation ability. Awareness and certifications, consequence management if somebody has been lax, adoption and adherence, investing in tools and niche security software and consulting, bring the right people. These are all some of the panacea for. So at this time I have, overshot by a minute or so. I would like to, if there is time, we can ask, we can have a Q&A. Yeah, okay. Maybe there are any questions. Okay, thank you very much.